The Crafter Blue Bon Voyage chronograph, or its full name, the Crafter Blue Bon Voyage Macaron Super Chrono, is another affordable Mecha Quartz chronograph. This one is really affordable as well, with a current sale price of $255. And what does that $255 get you? A 42 millimeter stainless steel case, a sapphire crystal, a 12-hour bezel, a Seiko VK64 movement, a dark navy dial with pastel colored subdials, and a tan leather strap. This case design is pretty similar to others with the curved or lyre style lugs, much like an Omega Speedmaster or in the micro brand world, Veyer. So while you can find many other watches with this style case, the selling point here is the dial colors and of course that low price. So let's check it out. Recently, I reviewed another Mecha Quartz chronograph, the Wayforth Voyager, and much like that one, this Crafter Blue Bon Voyage is a crazy value for the money, but there are a few issues, or a few things keeping it from being perfect. Now keep in mind, these are very affordable watches, and at $255, this may be the least expensive watch I have reviewed in a long time. I think the Momentum C Quartz, if bought at a pre-order price a few years ago, was the last time I reviewed a watch this inexpensive. And I do have to say, it does genuinely surprise me how nice of a watch you can get these days for $250 or thereabouts, or under $300 in general, especially with a sapphire crystal. I'll put all the specs on screen here, and if you didn't see my Wayforth review, my biggest gripes were that it didn't have a screw-down crown, and the bracelet, which was an optional purchase for the watch, did not match the finish of the case. The Crafter Blue does not have a bracelet option, and it does have a screw-down crown, so a point to the CB here, but this watch does have one glaring issue. But before we get to that, let's give a quick overview. This model only comes in one size and one color. It's 42 millimeters, which yes, I know. There's going to be people on the internet, probably in these comments, saying this is too big, it should be 39 millimeters. Well, I will just say there are more than enough 39 millimeter watches out there these days, and I'm personally glad this is 42 millimeters. And of course, size is subjective. The case is all stainless steel and dual finished with brushed and polished surfaces. Something that I find interesting is that the majority of watches I've reviewed with this style of case have high polished sides. Here the sides are all brushed, as are the inner parts of the lugs with a large polished chamfer on top that stretches all the ways to the lugs to give that curved lugs effect. The screw down crown is signed and the pushers have that nice tactile feel. And maybe it's ridiculous to some, but if I'm going to wear a watch on the regular, I just want it to have a screw down crown. Even if it has 100 meters of water resistance, I question it without that screw down. The dial here is the highlight of this model in my opinion. The colors used look great, and it's what really stood out to me when I first saw Crafter Blue posting this watch. It's a dark, like a really dark blue dial, and I'm trying to highlight it here with a lot of light in this video, of course, and I'll make sure to show it on camera as true to it is in real life. But just know it is a dark blue dial and it has a painted gravel type texture and the pastel color subdials. Like with any watch with this VK64 movement, no, it does not have a running second hand, just a 24-hour subdial and a 60-minute counter. I talked about this in the Wayforth review, and it's one downfall of this movement, and in my opinion, it limits its functionality. I prefer a clean dial, as most know, and I could probably do without the chronograph text on the dial, but I assumed that they were going for symmetry here, and I get that, but maybe just put the model name instead. I love the dial color here though, and the dark patina lume really works here, and they even framed the date cutout, and I also love the stadium chapter ring. This is just a very cool looking dial, and it has that vintage touch to it. The issue with this piece is the bezel. This is basically a pilot watch, so nothing wrong with a 12-hour bezel, and I like the look that it's all steel with a thin gear style bezel edge. It's a bi-directional bezel, which is to be expected, but the issue is it's just too loose. I mean, very loose, to the point that you'll see throughout this video and in my pictures on watchreport.com that it's just moved constantly. I can't handle this watch without that bezel moving, let alone wearing it. Now, I'm someone that's probably never going to use the bezel, though I do find it annoying it moves so easily and will not stay in place. And if you are someone that is planning on using this bezel as a second time zone, it will be pretty much impossible. As always, the caveat here is that this is just one example, and I could have gotten one with a loose bezel. The case back is very nice for a watch of this price. It has an etching of a plane, which is appropriate, and a nice brushed and frosted finish. I've always been a sucker for some nice caseback artwork, and at this price, they could have easily went with a plain caseback, but they didn't, and I appreciate that. The strap is tan leather. It has a nice soft backing and quick release pins, and a nice chunky buckle, a much nicer buckle than your typical thumbnail one, though it is unsigned. I think the strap looks and feels good, and I like the blue contrast minimal stitch, but for a 42mm watch, I would have expected it to be longer. It's 115mm by 75, and only 2 spots are left when sized to fit my 7.5-inch or 19.05cm wrist. Now, in fairness, it fits me just fine, and it's not too loose or too tight, but for a 42mm, I would have expected it to fit at least an 8-inch wrist, which this strap certainly would not. Another nice surprise was the Lume. While there is no Lume on the subdials, the numerals, indice dots, and the framing around the date wheel are lumed, though it would have been better if the actual date were lumed, but who really needs to know the date in the dark anyways? And it does glow pretty brightly and looks cool in the dark. Now, don't expect it to last all night long, but 3 hours and you should still be able to see the time in the dark. You know, when you're used to reviewing $500 watches, $1,000 watches, or as is the case sometimes here, $3,000 and even $4,000, $5,000 watches, when you start picking apart a $255 watch, it's almost like, well, how much do you want for $250? And I think that's a good question. How much do you want for $250? I really like the look of this watch, and for me personally, I probably would like it even more if you kept everything the same, but made it a 3-hand, maybe with an NH35 movement, and of course a much tighter bezel. And that really is my point of contention with this model, or at least this example, is that it's much too loose. Other than that, I have to say this is a very nice watch for the price, with a very funky and vintage appeal, especially with the dial colors. Head to the comments and let me know what you think of this Crafter Blue Bon Voyage. If you want to see more, head over to watchreport.com. And of course, you can go over to the Crafter Blue website to find anything I didn't cover here or to purchase this watch or one of their straps. As I say in almost every video, the best way to support Watch Report doesn't cost a dime. If you like this video, please hit that like button, and if you want to see more, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. This is Don Evans from Watch Report. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.